Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our discussions with respect to this really brilliant series, which is from Steve McQueen, which is Small Axe. And in particular, in the context of this Criterion release, this multi-disc Blu-ray set, which is from Criterion this year at spine number 1177. Small Axe, 5 films by Steve McQueen. Now, some of you may know we have, over the course of a number of videos, begun our discussions regarding this series and also regarding specific components of this series. And so today I'd like to continue on with that spirit by focusing in on another film or episode or component of Small Axe. So once again, let me take out one of the inner sleeve compartments here, which is this one. And if we open it up, we see disc 1 and disc 2 of the Small Axe series. And so the films will be found on such discs. So on the second disc, we have one of the films, which we'll talk about today, also described as being from the year 2020. And this is a work which is directed by Steve McQueen, and screenplay is credited to Cortia Newland and Steve McQueen. And among its really fantastic cast, we have John Boyega, who is playing Leroy Logan. And this is the work which is red, white, and blue. And here's the booklet which shows red, white, and blue here. This is one of the works, again, in Small Axe. My goodness. Wow. What to say about red, white, and blue? I think if we were to focus on the plot or story structure, we understand that this is focusing in on Leroy Logan and the inspiration, the real-life Leroy Logan, and real-life events that form the basis of the inspiration of this dramatic recreation or retelling of his life and his career. And specifically, various aspects of his life and career, once again, in London, connected to a sort of socio-political and cultural climate that is, from the very outset, showing us, showing Leroy and showing his family, and indeed showing parts of his community, and indeed to us, the viewers, aspects of unfortunate and unpleasant displays of racial prejudice against him and against his family and against other people in the community. And in the context of police enforcement. So this is bringing to the fore, this is bringing into the spotlight aspects of systemic racial prejudice coming from institutionalized areas of society. And here the focus is the Metropolitan Police Force of London. Now, Leroy Logan, we see aspects of his life growing up and then also in adulthood, and in the form of the performance, the great performance by John Boyega. And here we have Leroy Logan, again, based upon real-life events. So much like the earlier work in Small Axe Mangrove, here we have a dramatized telling of the story, which is maintaining a sense of fidelity to real-life events and personages, at the center of which is here Leroy Logan. Here we see Leroy Logan and his efforts and his successes and his career in terms of science and scientific research. But due to specific circumstances that he and we as viewers come to realize over the course early on into the work, he is compelled to want to join the Metropolitan Police Force. In a sense, leaving behind his career in scientific research and instead devoting his career primarily to that of serving as an officer of the law. And so this charts that story in essence, and we see aspects of his training, and we see aspects of his graduating from the sort of training academy, thus becoming an official officer of the law. And we see him and his engagement with his partners or other people similarly situated. Also, we see him in various forms of, say, scenarios and uh, circumstances that involve him once again continuing to be perhaps the subject of a type of racially tinged prejudice against him as a police officer from various aspects of the force and units with whom he is working, as well as antagonism from the community that he is hoping to serve. And this is because there is from the community, at least from certain pockets and certain corners of the community, as expressed in this work, we understand that there is a sense of antagonism from these certain pockets of community towards the police forces because, again, of these aspects of systemic racial prejudice that is part of the sort of law enforcement aspects of certain elements of these specificities that we see in this work. Let's put it that way. So there is a very very precarious position that Leroy Logan, the John Boyega, through the John Boyega performance, Leroy Logan finds himself in. So he seems to be, in essence, in a situation that is placing him in a great deal of stress and a great deal of emotional and psychological type of pressure. But this is, again, forming one of the aspects of the fascinating, say, psychological portrait of this person, Leroy Logan, because we also realize, perhaps early on, that we understand that his motives for wanting to join the police force are, I think, very complex and nuanced. But what one can say, primarily speaking, and again, we get a sense of this early on, is that he seems to want to join the police force because he is intent on trying to initiate or trying to inspire some kind of social change. And that social change is, or the theory of such social change, or the impetus of such social change as exemplified by the actions of Leroy Logan, the theory is social change to be made from within. And so therein lies the crux of the hypothesis of social change, as exemplified in this work, Red, White, and Blue, as exemplified by the actions of Leroy Logan, and indeed one can say as a type of connective tissue with other works in Small Acts, one can say that is in line with, or maybe has a certain degree of continuity with, say, the theory of social change that is shown or exemplified in a work like, say, Mangrove. But here in Red, White, and Blue, it seems to be quite expressly the hypothesis as espoused by Leroy Logan. And so we see, therefore, his attempts at joining this institution in order to try to change it from within. And so there already we have a very, it's a very noble positioning, but it's also a very precarious one because, as I was suggesting earlier, and as he sees, and as we see through his example, we see and he sees that there are many pressure points that are placed upon him, even as he's trying to do the right thing in his mind and his eyes. There are many pressure points coming not just from the police force aspect, but also from the community aspect, because that is the situation that he finds himself in. Now, he seems to understand both sides. Now, is he always happy about this? No. Leroy Logan, again, in the hands of the performance of John Boyega, which is magnificent, we see the frustration, we see the anger, we see the raw emotional intensity. We also see the hurt, but we also see the sincerity and the love and the devotion and dedication that this person has towards the job, and also towards the mission, and also towards this hypothesis of, once again, social change from within. Now, will he succeed or won't he? Again, history and the public record does show this, and so this is, again, the basis for the dramatic telling or retelling of his story. But in terms of a viewing as a dramatic, say, feature, again, with its links of fidelity to real life events and real life persons, again, we have a work that is very much true to form, and it's very, it has dramatic beats that are very compelling and suspenseful even, and we always get a sense of the stakes of the situation, and also psychological turmoil and the confusion and real complexities, because, as I say, we are dealing with communities that are hurt and that are being affected, as well as enforcement side, where which is also, I think, being viewed with a type of multi lens, because we see various aspects, various officers coming from different parts of life and society. And so it's not one monolithic view of community or police force. It's a very multifaceted view of many sides, which is, and again, Leroy Logan finds himself in many senses of the phrase at the very heart and center. And that brings with it a lot of, say, the ability as a bridge to understand various sides or appreciate various sides, but also brings with it a lot of stress and turmoil as well. So, again, the public record shows the outcomes of these stories and these situations of the real life Leroy Logan. And so, in that way, this work is maintains a sense of fidelity linked to real life events. At the same time, it does show dramatic beats, and it has the ability to interweave this cinematic storytelling technique in a way that is also very effective and very quite powerful, and also in a way that helps us and allows us, the viewer, to appreciate the situations and to be part of the situations and to become part of the world. And this, I think, brings to it again that great balance between dramatic storytelling beats on the one hand, and then real or sincere and faithful links of fidelity to real life events and people. So that balance, once again, is struck by Steve McQueen and company in fantastic and brilliant fashion. And I think that part of it has to do with, or the main component has to do with, among other things, the brilliant performances. And we have to mention John Boyega here. John Boyega's performance is remarkable. It is so remarkable. There are moments where, well, there's a very sense of physicality to his performance as well, because some scenes do involve a intense degree of physicality, and he pulls it off so well. There are also moments of type of quiet, say, introspection, and also keep in mind the really heavily nuanced and quite complex position that Leroy Logan finds himself in because of the, say, various, say, contradictory elements that are part of this situational positioning. Leroy Logan finds himself maybe almost simultaneously accepting and rejecting certain stances at the same time. And there is this brilliant, uncanny, and genius way that John Boyega in his performance seems to be able at the same time to register, say, in a facial expression. He seems to be able to register both acceptance and rejection at the same time, which is utterly brilliant. I mean, two differing, contradictory notions are embodied in one moment in John Boyega's performance. And so this is an example of just the remarkable depth and fortitude of his performance here as Leroy Logan. Again, it's a performance that is bringing to a sort of cinematic life the real life person that is Leroy Logan, and it respects the complexity and the stress of the situation that Leroy Logan must have found himself in this a very precarious situation, but also it shows the fortitude and the strength of character and will that must have been necessary for this type of very intense situation. So that type of nobility is also shown with a great deal of depth and a sensitivity in the performance, again, to reflect and give a cinematic voice to and a cinematic fidelity to the real life situation and person that is Leroy Logan. So in that way and many other ways, Red, White, and Blue is a remarkable achievement, yet another remarkable achievement in this line of works of the series known as Small Acts. Again, as I mentioned with the other discussions, this was the first time for me to watch Small Acts. So obviously, therefore, it was the first time for me to watch this work, Red, White, and Blue. And I was not fully aware of this story and this history prior to watching this, but I once again found myself riveted and in awe and very moved. And the story was one where we're not necessarily given, quote unquote, easy answers to the very complex questions, which I also admire and appreciate. You know, I admire that it doesn't, the films provide no easy solutions. However, the act of exploration and the act of a type of portrait of these people in these situations and giving a certain type of attention and cinematic voice to the psychological portraits. I think that is part of the point, and to give shine a light on that type of story is itself a type of answer. And if that's the case, then a great and full-bodied example of that is found here with this work. Great, great work, which is Red, White, and Blue. The Criterion Collection has released Red, White, and Blue as part of its Blu-ray set of this series Small Axe, 5 films by Steve McQueen. And as we mentioned, it is found in the Small Axe sleeved portion, which has the 2 discs on Blu-ray, and so you can find Small Axe on disc 2 of the 2 discs here. And there's going to be another sleeve, which we'll talk about in a separate video discussion, but for purposes of today, that's where you'll find Red, White, and Blue. And once again, about the presentation, the great booklet has notes about each of the works. And so with respect to Red, White, and Blue, it states, the 5 films of Small Axe are presented in their original aspect ratios, Red, White, and Blue, in 1.85 to 1. Approved by director Steve McQueen, these new digital masters were created in 2K resolution from the 35mm original camera negatives from Mangrove in Red, White, and Blue. So this is, and also, sorry, the original 5.1 surround soundtracks were remastered from the digital audio master files, disc mastering, Pixelogic Media. So once again, like I mentioned with the previous discussions, and like I will likely mention with the subsequent discussions, this was my first time to watch Small Axe, and so therefore it was my first time to watch Red, White, and Blue. I therefore have no previous experience with watching this work. Thus, I have no frame of reference in terms of an ability to carry out any type of comparative analysis with regard to my current viewing of this Criterion-based release of Small Axe versus any other showing. I haven't seen it on broadcast TV. I haven't seen it elsewhere. I haven't seen it projected on a screen, unfortunately. So I don't have any other comparative relative frame of reference. But that being said, and in acknowledgement of my limited expertise with regard to this work and to the presentations, I can still say that I'm quite happy and impressed indeed. I note, therefore, that once again, based on these notes, it appears that yes, Red, White, and Blue was shot on film, 35mm film, much like Mangrove, and so there is a case to be said that that might lend itself to a sense of, say, links to history, as we mentioned, like in our discussion with Mangrove. There is this ability or this way in which the telling of that tale or the telling of that story, as well as the telling of this story, Leroy Logan's story here, has a sense of fidelity to real life events and history or events that are part of the historical public record. And so if that's the case, then that might be some indication as to the philosophical choice behind the employment of 35mm. Not to take anything away from any other formats, of course, which we see employed with great effect in other works that are part of Small Axe. But that could be it, although I'm speculating on that notion. In any event, there is a real sense of, how should I put it, there's a way in which this film seems to be showing the period detail of history while not pretending to be any type of cinema verite quasi-documentary, which is, again, I think part of the point. It's purposely applied dramatization of real life events. So that balance is struck very well, and the way that it looks and sounds, I think it has a sense of fidelity to period detail, which I think is stunning, and I think is very effective indeed. So I was overall very, very impressed with this presentation as it's shown on this Criterion release. Now let's move to the supplements. So once again, when you put in the disc, you have your choice to select which film you want to watch. So for purposes of today, if you choose red, white, and blue, that'll take you to the red, white, and blue menu. And then from there, you can choose the supplements if you so desire. And so what are the supplements here? So we have, as far as I can tell, two supplements. The first of which being behind the scenes. This is approximately 4 minutes. Much like the other behind the scenes that we've seen with other supplements for other films and small acts, here we have, again, some of the key players of the cast and crew speaking in this sort of extended promo type of presentation, but it's also meant to, again, show certain aspects of the production detail and the concerns of the work and the story and the plot involving Leroy Logan and others. So this is featuring, for example, John Boyega and Steve Toussaint and others. So again, it's 4 minutes, so it's brief, relatively speaking, but it's also very much worth it. So please check this out if you can. So this is the behind the scenes for Red, White, and Blue. And then there is a trailer that's also included for these supplements. And this trailer is, it appears to be for maybe small acts overall, but that's also included as part of the red, white, and blue supplements. So here we have the behind the scenes and a trailer, but we don't have any other supplements, unlike, say, what we saw with Lover's Rock and Mangrove. So it would have been interesting and nice to have seen more supplements devoted to red, white, and blue specifically, but this is what we have here. So please check those supplements out if you have not yet done so already with respect to red, white, and blue. And then just to conclude our discussion of red, white, and blue in the context of this release from Criterion, we will talk in a separate video about the cover art and packaging and design, the digipack art, etc. And we'll also talk a little bit in a separate video with a bit more detail about the great booklet. But if I could just point your attention right now to pages 8 and 9 of the booklet, because here we have some red, white, and blue specific stuff. We have a write-up and also the title and a picture, as well as on this side we have cast and crew credits. So please check that out if you can as well in terms of the booklet. But again, we'll have more discussion points about the overall packaging as a type of wrap-up in a separate video. But for now, these have been comments with regard to red, white, and blue. I might save these comments a little bit later in the wrap-up video, but let me just say here that, it would have been interesting to have had more, say, Criterion-produced supplements with regard to red, white, and blue in particular, and the like, but that's also something that I might say as a type of minor critique for some of the other supplemental packages, but we'll talk about that as well in terms of the wrap-up. But I think minor criticisms aside, with respect to the present or the release, I should say that the work itself is really it's incredible. It's incredible. The telling of the story is quite incredible, and so I'm very impressed with this indeed. Very, very impressed. So that's it as far as our discussion of red, white, and blue is concerned and on the Criterion release. I'll save more comments about some criticisms I have regarding the supplements for the wrap-up video. But let me just say right now that I think it would have been nice to have seen more supplements that were red, white, and blue specific included with this. So not to take anything away from the supplements that we already have, but it would have been great to have had something additional or something else added to that. But be that as it may, and again, I will save further comments on that for the final wrap-up video. But be that as it may, red, white, and blue as a work, wow, it's incredible. It's very impressive, and it is, again, as a work that I was seeing for the first time, I was totally amazed and moved and shocked by, and just very, very affected by. It is this work, which is red, white, and blue, as part of this release, Small Acts, 5 films by Steve McQueen, red, white, and blue. All right, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, Please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great, great, great movies. So until the next video, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.